If there was one thing that you could magically do to change the system that we're fighting against here at Occupy Wall Street, what would it be?
This whole crowd of people, like kind of like a organized effort. Well, I would love to see the Fed be tackled, which is the Federal Reserve. That would be a main obstacle, but one that would really change the face of Wall Street. Because if you go after the money machine, Wall Street's ultimate power comes from, then you really put a dent in them, you scare them. And if you take the Fed on, you also scare big government. So you scare the two entities, big monopoly corporations and big government, which work together, by taking out their cash machine. If we had a cash machine, we'd take over pretty quick. So let's take out their cash machine, go back to a Bill of Rights-based system, and get the individual liberties to allow innovative, free market ideas. In fact, let me see if I can rephrase this. I'd like to see the free market of ideas be introduced to this crowd of people beyond what has been categorized leftist, socialist, communist. I'd like to see people of all categories here. All these people claim to be conservative are saying, it's too many liberals, too many leftists here, they're idiots. Well, hey, you're saying that, but why aren't you here presenting alternative ideas to what they've presented? Why do you let them dominate the marketplace with a monopoly? So my point is this. It's not just a financial free market, but it's an ideas free market. You need to be out here. And that would change the face of Wall Street if we can come up with a better organized manner to take on the Fed and scare the hell out of these New World Order people running this country's name into the ground.
Very well said. Maybe, you know, your friends or whoever you're speaking of, they're still caught in the left-right paradigm if they're complaining about things like that.
Sad to say, and I just wish they would realize that ultimately we're all Americans, and ultimately the Bill of Rights is the most important thing beyond political allegiances to a party. What is a Republican and what is a Democrat? What is this country? It's a republic. A democratic voice has majority voice, but in a constitutional republic, we have the rule of law. Now, these labels have become twisted to mean completely different things. Democrats do not equal the people anymore, the political party, that is. And the Republican Party does not represent a republic in form of government, which is what this country was founded on. So let's get past these quote-unquote labels and start getting back to the core issues, which is what Bill of Rights amendment is being violated by which party and why. And certainly the Federal Reserve is a major violation of every liberty in this country and a contradiction to the Bill of Rights because it's in the Communist Manifesto as the fifth plank. And majority of Wall Street, all these people arguing about Wall Street, the reality is Wall Street follows the premise of fascism and communism if you read the written philosophies of both concepts. It is foreign to the Bill of Rights, the Founding Fathers, and the very essential liberties that govern the people, that we govern.
Beautifully said. I mean, the thing here that makes this so beautiful to me is people seem to have risen above labels and risen above such snap judgments as you're on this side, I'm on this side. This has been very unifying, I've felt.
I agree, and here's the thing. We got to stop looking at these labels as socialist. And yeah, there is some fundamental realities behind those labels, but again, we're all Americans, which means we're all in the same boat. If we're in the same boat sinking, it's time we ought to get the lifeboats mounted together instead of sinking with the Titanic, arranging deck chairs, putting in Democrats and Republicans in the office that don't serve the people. You could higher taxes or lower taxes depending on which party philosophy you come from, but if you don't fix monetary policy, you're raising or lowering rocks in your hand, which are valued to nothing in your perception of what money is. Money is what we perceive it to be, and the Federal Reserve System has convinced us that the paper money that they allow the Treasury to print up is somehow money. Well, that's the trick. We use the money that they allow us to use. It's like renting money, and the people who run the Federal Reserve own the money. It's like the equivalency to owning the color blue, as Chris Rock once said in a comedy special. So we're dealing with people at the top 1% who own the money that you and I use to purchase goods and services. That's a command-controlled economy where ultimately they're the only victors and everybody else is a basic victim of what you call this system. And if you want to end the poverty, end the wars, and any kind of social injustice system, you have to go to the door of the Federal Reserve System and you need to abolish it and set in a constitutional system. And some say we got to go back to gold and silver. Well, that sounds like a great idea, but I'd like to know what's at Fort Knox first to see if all that gold that we were told is going to be stockpiled there to protect the value of the dollar. I'd like to know if it's actually there. I have a feeling it's been stolen.
What do they call those gold-plated bars that China tried to pass off to China?
Tungsten gold?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you look at Fort Knox, we haven't audited it in decades, so we can't really tell if there's any gold there because they won't even tell us. Just like we can't even audit the Fed to find out what their check balance is. Considering not a government agency and all, which are not held accountable or even to elections, we don't even dictate whether or not they be thrown out of the policy control.
So what's the saying people say? The Federal Reserve is about as federal as?
Federal Express, folks. That's reality. Yes, folks, it's just no different than Federal Express. And we got to realize, let's think about it. Why would it be called the Federal Reserve? Because psychologically, if you introduced that idea 3 or 4 generations ago, by the 4th generation for sure, they probably never heard of the details behind it. They're going to just assume, just with the assumption that it's federal and the reserve, when it's neither or. And the Fed, folks. End the Fed. Because if you don't end the Fed will end you.
And what's our best hope of doing that?
Well, we got, as far as politically, we do have some candidates who would like to end the Fed. One particular candidate, compared to all the rest of them, is Congressman Ron Paul from Texas. He's running under the Republican platform, but again, regardless of the title Republican, he's not running as a Republican because that's who he stands for. He's running as an American because unfortunately the system we use in this country, we have a 2-party system, which is really a 1-party with 2 factions. So people are stuck with this 2-party system of no choice. So Ron Paul is a choice in that 2-party system, which is based on no choice. And look, he gets the most campaign contributions from active duty military families, and yet his position is against the policies that are leading these wars on. So isn't that a little ironic that, tough, hoorah military Marine guys, families would be supporting a guy who's against the war and would rather bring the troops home and sensibly use them than a guy who wants to end the Federal Reserve and actually allow you to keep the money that you work hard to maintain? I mean, you're allowed to keep what you earn, and Ron Paul is just telling people, read the Constitution, read the Bill of Rights, and by doing so, you will protect the very liberties you were left. And he said something very profound when I went to his Webster Hall gathering. We've had presidents who said we're going to change America for the better, we're going to change policy, and yet they've made it worse every time they change it, whether it's Democrat or Republican. One guy gets in from the Republicans, puts unconstitutional policies in, then we de-elect him, put a Democrat in, and essentially they never repeal any of it, and they keep it, and they further the consolidation of power. It's like putting a noose around your neck, tightening the notch, election by election until you stop breathing. But my point earlier is, Ron Paul's message has not changed. Meanwhile, the country has in a more despotic manner.
You know who came out also for ending the Fed today? Dennis Kucinich.
That is true. If you're a Democrat and you don't feel comfortable with Ron Paul, there are people like Dennis Kucinich on the Democratic ticket who...
I'd like to see a Paul Kucinich ticket.
Well, if you want to see a bipartisan, true people's candidate gathering, Dennis Kucinich on the Democratic side and Ron Paul on the Republican side would be a very interesting race, to say the least. And definitely worth a while to see.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely. Hopefully I was